right, we'll call this meeting to order. Again, appreciate everybody coming out on this lovely, hot Monday evening. We've got a pretty good little meeting here. A lot of important things I think we'll get approved tonight. And we'll keep moving Jonesborough forward. I think so far we've, with 2020 been such a challenging and unnerving year, town of Jonesboro's done just fine. Our first item on the agenda is a public hearing. It's an ordinance rezoning property at 152 Headtown Road from R1 low-density residential to B3 arterial business and R1 low-density residential to B6 corridor business. Is there anyone here to speak to that? All right, very good. I think that's to do with the Weigels.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. What's that?
Yeah.
Weigels? Wiggles? You used to watch Wiggles growing up, didn't you? The Wiggles? All right. All right, we'll adjourn the public hearing and move into our regular meeting. And first item on the agenda is the opening prayer. Ask Vice Mayor Dixon to lead us in that. He always does a great job.
Let us all pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day that you've allowed us to see. We thank you for the wonderful blessings that, God, you have bestowed on us. We thank you, God, for just the health that you provide, and we thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to help somebody and, God, be a servant, Lord. God, we're grateful to live in this community. It really means something special to all of us. And, God, we thank you for our neighbors, and we thank you that you issued a command that we should love our neighbors as ourselves, and that was a great command. And so, God, we ask, Lord, that this evening that you will guide this board as we think about our neighbors, that all of our decisions be to your glory. And we ask that you bless the citizenry of this great community. And we ask it all, Lord, in your name, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Next is our pledge. Ruth, who do you have tonight?
You have Sergeant Jeff White.
All right, very good. Let's all face the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jeff. Doesn't look like we have Abby here tonight, so Donna, she'll take over those duties. Roll call, please.
Mayor Best.
Here.
Alderman Callahan.
Here.
Alderman Causey.
Here.
Alderman Countermine.
Here.
Alderman Dixon.
Here.
All right, we're all present and accounted for, and we're trying to make sure we're spaced out well up here. And of course, you know Washington County put a new mandate out today that requires masks, so we're all going to make sure we're all going to follow that here at the town of Jonesborough. And we'll follow that here in our boardroom. First item on the agenda is our consent agenda. Alderman, do you have anything on there you need to remove?
7B and 8.
And 8?
7B and 8.
All right. We'll pull those off of there. We have a consent agenda 1 through 9 minus 7B and 8. Anyone have anything else? If not, I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda minus those two items.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to approve from Alderman Callahan, second from Alderman Causey. Any discussion? I'll call for the vote. Donna?
Alderman Callahan.
Aye.
Alderman Causey.
Aye.
Alderman Countermine. Aye. Alderman Dixon.
Aye.
All right, motion carried. Some important things in there was approving some materials for Lincoln Park. It's going to be up here near our senior center. We're making good progress on that, and looking forward to getting that facility open. Be a good park for our community. Next item on our agenda is our financial report. Alderman, if you got any comments about that? Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go back and let's do, I always forget to clean up the consent agenda 7B that Virginia would like us to talk to. Let's go back to 7B and we'll cover that first.
I just wanted to add to the recommendation that it's subject to it being included in this next year's budget if we have the money,
Okay.
and a job description for that position.
Okay. Alderman, anybody else got any comments about that? So on 7B, we can take the recommendation and add, include a job description and subject to
It been in the budget.
being in the budget.
Mhm.
Okay? Sounds good. Can I have a motion for that, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion to approve from Alderman Causey, a second from Alderman Countermine. Any discussion? Call for the vote, please.
Alderman Causey.
Aye.
Alderman Countermine.
Aye.
Alderman Callahan.
Aye.
Alderman Dixon.
Aye.
All right, motion carried. Now we'll move into number 8. Virginia, let you lead that.
The holiday schedule where we're changing the storytelling holiday to Columbus Day, I think it should be added in here that it's just a one-time thing, because if storytelling comes back next year, then we'll have storytelling.
Right.
And Columbus Day is being a day off for the employees. That's our board meeting. Do we want to change the board meeting date? Or have the employees come in on their holiday?
What would you all like? Glenn, you got an opinion on that?
Be nice not to come in on a holiday.
Oh, come on.
Well said.
I've worked in retail so long, holidays mean we work.
So can we have it push it to that, have the meeting pushed to that following Tuesday, right?
Yeah, I don't think it conflicts with any other meetings that I'm aware of as far as that second Tuesday.
Okay. That sounds good. Virginia, you want to make a motion to cover that?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Motion from Alderman Causey, a second from Alderman Callahan. Alderman, you clear on that?
October 13th.
All right. October 13th will be that meeting there in October. Call for the vote, please.
Alderman Causey.
Aye.
Alderman Callahan.
Aye.
Alderman Countermine.
Aye.
Alderman Dixon.
Aye.
All right, motion carried. Now we'll get into our financial report. It's always fun to talk about our little town. We've kind of done pretty well in that area, but I tell you, it isn't such an unnerving time. You can never do quite good enough. We did see we've had strong sales tax collections for years, and this year's been no difference. I always felt like when this craziness happened that Jonesborough would come through quite fine in sales tax. Sales tax is not a huge producer for us. It's growing though, and just because so many of our strong sales tax producers are large retailers like Food City, Ingles, and Lowe's, and all those remained open, and then this is one time when it's fortunate that your restaurants are all drive-through, because we pretty well had food no matter what. So those restaurants and large businesses did very well, and came through again. April collections up over 20%. Up to about $185,000, so that's a healthy increase over last year. So it's good to see that continue, and we'll probably see that in our next month as well. Alderman, do y'all have any comments about the financial report? If not, I'll take a motion to approve.
Move to approve, Mayor.
Got a motion to approve from Alderman Dixon. Got a second from Alderman Countermine. All right. Call for the vote, please.
Alderman Dixon.
Aye.
Alderman Countermine. Alderman Callahan.
Aye.
Alderman Causey.
Aye.
All right, very good. Motion carried. And I'm going to try to keep this as short as possible. It's communications from the mayor is next on the agenda, and we've got quite a few things here. We have something positive happen. I love talking about it. And one thing we'll get into in a little bit is a resolution approving this school project. We'll get into that a little bit, but it's great to get our design committee together. And one of the first things you needed to do was decide exactly where you was going to place that school on that site. And that's a really important decision, because where that building went could mean the difference in millions of dollars. And just shifting that thing to the east side would have probably cost us an additional $1 million minimum. But we went back to the original location, and we feel like it's the safest location, the most economical location, and that was a big first step. And now we're going to get down to Ken Ross and them and design the the guts of this building now. So, big move. I appreciate the design committee. It was a unanimous choice, but there was certainly discussion about that because we drew up plans based on wherever that building could go on that site. Had Todd Wood determine, where would the savings be, and we took the site that didn't take any retaining walls to get it built, and that saves you a ton of money not having to do that. Employee of the month, we've been ever since March. We've had those guys just stay at home, just everything going on. But our employee of the month this month was Jeff Ward, and I think he's won this before. I think last year, does a great job in our street department. And Malcolm just said that he'd like to nominate Jeff Ward for the distinction of Employee of the Month for July of 2020. Said Jeff is a vital part of our street department family. He is hardworking, dependable, conscientious, considerate of others, and very timely. Of course, those are the basic ingredients for any good employee, but Jeff's attributes go much further. Jeff brings a solid work ethic and attitude to work each day, and is contagious and helps to promote a calm confidence in the sometimes supercharged workday. Another intangible that Jeff brings to work each day is solid character. When employees show a strong work ethic, it tends to raise the bar and standard for others. Jeff is an important part of our traffic control and design team, the implementation team, and again, sometimes Jeff comes out with out-of-the-box thinking to solve traffic control issues. Jeff is an asset on every project he is involved with. It has been fulfilling to see Jeff's skill set grow over the past several years working with him. I look forward to working with Jeff into the future. For these reasons, he nominated Jeffrey Ward for the Employee of the Month for July. So we appreciate Jeff for everything he does. And I told Virginia and them up here, I said this past probably month, I've gotten more emails than I can really handle, to be honest with you. From citizens, and I appreciate that, and I always try to make sure I respond back to them, and I think I'll get a chance to read some of those to you here first. But one thing that's probably just as important is since Cameo's out there, Cameo, her and her group are always great bringing back some hardware from us right here. They won some more the Pinnacle Awards for tourism. So we appreciate the quality work that they do. We're second to none in there. We're proud of the work that our staff does for that right there. All right, I'll start in the order that most of these were received, I think. Just give you an example of some of the things that we get, and I always try to make sure when you're reading emails, you don't read emotions into things. And this is the first one that I got from a gentleman, and he says, as a concerned citizen, the thought of still allowing a block party in downtown Jonesborough is lethally irresponsible. Many people would put at risk for no reason. If this decision is not changed, you will not have my vote in the upcoming elections, and will work to make sure you do not get your job back. People matter more than money. And so my response to him is I said, I appreciate the email, but I wish you would have included your name for a more personal response. First, our town board unanimously approved closing Main Street. Generally, events are driven by JAMSA, which is the Jonesborough Area Merchants, and the town just approves closing the street. This event might be called a block party, but it's mostly just allowing businesses to expand their stores by setting up a sidewalk sale. Restaurants can add tables to the streets. All of these distancing measures are allowed because the town thought it safer to spread the traffic out this weekend versus allowing all the shopping traffic indoors in more congested environments. Just think of it as sidewalk sales. Secondly, we chose not to launch fireworks, allow vendors in the streets, etc., to improve distancing and keep people outdoors in the safest environment. We will have other safety messages and measures in play as well. The businesses downtown are all family-owned and rely on income to feed their families. So many will be open, and any business wishing to be closed certainly has unlimited freedom to do so. Some will be closed, but our board's position was it would be safer to close the street and allow sidewalk sales. Our board deliberated over 3 hours that night on how best to move forward in the safest manner, yet still not destroy the livelihoods of these entrepreneurs who live paycheck to paycheck. No unemployment, unfortunately, for entrepreneurs. To close This event has zero to do with finances for the town, other than we don't want to see our beautiful historic downtown become a wasteland of boarded up and closed businesses like so many other towns, because it is so hard to reverse that trend once it starts. Feel free to call my personal number below if you wish. And he responded back, and I'll just cut the he responded to me and I responded to him, and this was his close. He says, "Thank you for your courteous and professional response," because he and I had several exchanges. "It is a breath of fresh air, and I very much appreciate it. You have won my respect and think we would be good friends. Hope your heart condition improves and want nothing but the best for you." He says, "While I disagree about the mask and the officer part," because I had mentioned that we were a little concerned back this time when we was doing those deliberations, where if we required a mask, how are you going to enforce it? And I think we'll get cooperation from the public, and it won't be an issue. "You have taken ample time speaking to me, and I wish your family a happy 4th. So I do like getting emails, because even when they're somewhat, you take them a little bit harshly, but it gives you a chance to learn some things about people. And I got this one from a Cordelia Jones. This gentleman's last name was Jonathan. He ended up telling me his name was Jonathan, and we ended up having a good little exchange there. This is from Cordelia Jones, and I think I gave everybody one here. If anybody would like a copy, I'll give it to them. But she had a nice letter to us. She goes, and this she sent this to the governor and everybody in Johnson City and everybody here in Jonesborough for the most part. She said, "Greetings, Governor Lee. I pray this electronic transmittal finds you in good health and high spirits. I wanted to share a beautiful experience I had with the Jonesborough, Tennessee Police Department. With so much negative press being put in the media related to policemen and officers, I felt I would be remiss not to share my phenomenal experience. I recently accepted a new job that would require a security clearance." And I'll tell you, we ended up having an exchange. This is Cordelia, very nice lady that took the time to have another exchange with the governor about this. The job is in Connecticut, but before I can start, they requested fingerprints and a background check. I have been unemployed since the COVID-19 pandemic erupted, and as one can imagine, money is scarce. I contacted my police department in Johnson City, Tennessee, and they were simply not willing to assist or take a chance, although I shared with them how desperate I was for employment and that employer was required to have fingerprinting. After being told no continuously by the Jonesborough Police Department, where I reside and pay taxes, I decided to call the next city over, which is Jonesborough, Tennessee's oldest town, to determine if they would be willing to assist or perhaps volunteer to assist me. And again, she's sending this to the governor. Without hesitation, Major Astrup asked, "How quickly can you get here?" Thank you, Jamie. There's Jamie right back there. Upon arrival, Officer Walker fingerprinted me and sent me on my pilgrimage journey.
It's Officer White. Should be White.
It should have been White. Okay, she has Walker in there. Okay, Jeff, thank you. Please commend Major Astrup and Officer White for their commitment to the oath they took to serve and protect is greatly appreciated. Because of their promise to preserve the dignity and respect the rights of all individuals and to act with honesty, courtesy, and regard to the welfare of others, I'm able to move forward with my onboarding process with my new employer. I am grateful and humbled by their kindness on this day. In spite of this pandemic, they still rise to the occasion, humbly and respectfully. Cordelia Jones. And if anybody like that, I tell you that's as good as it comes. Thank you, gentlemen. And you never know we expect that in Jonesborough. We don't have an unwelcoming town staff here or a town. We expect that. We're here as public servants, and that goes for our police officers, our town staff, our aldermen. So it's just good to see people take the time to recognize that. And you won't believe this. Thank you, John. This was from a lady way out in California. She says, she sent this to me. She says, "I'm writing to you from the crazy state of California. I read in the news about Jonesborough, Tennessee's church giving $1,000 to each police officer in thanks for the work they do. What a wonderful gesture. I merely wanted to bake my police department here in Pasadena a gesture of appreciation for all they are dealing with right now. But they cannot accept anything now as they are too worried about someone could put in their food. What a sad situation here in California. She said, blessings to you in Jonesborough. Regards, Marion Dawsett Leos. And I responded back to her. I said, Marion, thank you so much for taking the time to write me. We did indeed have a gathering yesterday with our town's public safety leadership and the Lighthouse Baptist Church leadership and congregation. It was a beautiful morning for the event, and the message was wonderful. I personally am so happy our police officers have received this $1,000 gift from the church, but I'm also more determined than ever to achieve our goal of having the best paid and equipped force in our region. It is sad what our law enforcement officers must endure in public because of these risks. I'm sure the officers would love that cake you wish to bake. You might see if your town has a kitchen at their station or a facility in which you could bake. In our town, we have kitchens at our senior center and performing arts center. Also, many larger public safety facilities and fire departments have kitchens as well. Otherwise, keep the faith and show support and try to have others do the same. And, of course, then vote. And that was all the way from California. And my last one, and I responded back to these two here, but we didn't get that one printed out quite right. This came from Joe and Sandra here in Jonesborough. And she said, I think it was Joe here. This was actually from Sandra. Said, I don't think I've ever written a letter to the editor. She sent this to the Herald and Tribune and also emailed me. But I am so concerned about our downtown Jonesborough that I felt just compelled to write. We have lived in Jonesborough about 13 years and absolutely love this little town. We participate in many town activities and try to support in any way we can. First, let me say, in agreement with Heidi L's letter last week, we also appreciate our leaders trying to protect us from the virus and provide a safe reopening. We know how hard it must be to make those decisions. But with all this said, I'm extremely concerned about our downtown restaurants and merchants. This week, when Storytelling Center announced this year's festival cancellation, right on the heels of Jonesborough Day's been canceled, I felt like this might be the proverbial nail in the coffin for many businesses. I just want to urge and maybe beg our residents to truly supporting downtown and really all our businesses in Jonesborough. For example, as retirees, we don't need to make a lot of major purchases, but I am trying to buy more family and friends gifts from downtown. Also, our neighborhood Bible study that meets every Wednesday morning and then go to church have decided to only go to Jonesborough restaurants. Likewise, our group of neighborhood men do their weekly luncheon in Jonesborough. Let Johnson City residents support Johnson City. Save your gas, spend a little bit more in Johnson City. And please, let's all do our part in saving our beautiful little town. And leaders, please do all you can to help our downtown merchants. And we intend to do that. So, some beautiful emails that we get, and I appreciate all of them. You know, sometimes you get them and you think they can be contentious, but you know, people are passionate about positions, and I respect that. And we're going to allow anyone to express their opinion, and hope, just like Jonesborough has always been, you know, we're going to come to an agreement somewhere and a conclusion, then we move on to something else. So I appreciate all of that. We had a great, I think, event Friday night. Movies on the Main drive-in edition. It's the neatest little thing. I think it's going to grow and grow. It's where you can park your car and your family can kind of stay together inside the car or right outside of it, stay, you know, at a safe distance away from each other. But our first event on a Friday had mediocre attendance. We revamped some things, actually charged a fee. And when we charged the fee, we almost had a sellout, I think. And we probably did once people at 9 o'clock got there for the movie. But it's truly a great experience. If you hadn't pulled your car down there, please do it. We charge a little $10 fee just so we don't have people reserve and then not show up, and then all the ones who wanted to come don't have a space anymore. So with that reservation for $10, you get $10 back in Jamza coins, which we hope you'll take down and spend at the downtown merchants. So I think it's the second one. I think I saw a lot of kids in Texas Burrito when I was in there that I know would never have been there without that movie. And I saw them walking the streets. And I think our third one's going to be probably even better. It's the Goonies, I think, right, Cameo? And then we'll keep on. This might be and Adam, I think he kind of birthed this during our 3-hour discussion. And I even said at that meeting, I said, this might be the way we discovered. This should have been the way it's always been done. And as we move forward from this pandemic, we might find we'll continue this and then bring some more stuff onto our Main Street that can help our downtown businesses even more. So thanks to the team for putting that on, and thanks to Adam for that. And our senior center is starting a membership drive, and I get a compliment from Mary Regan all the time. So we're doing some great things up at the senior center, and that's probably one facility we need to be as careful with as possible. I guess that's it for me, Alderman. I'll turn this over to you, ladies and gentlemen. So anyone got anything they'd like to bring up? Virginia? Okay. Gentlemen?
I do.
All right, Terry.
I wanted to clarify, last month I made statements, and some of them I think were misinterpreted, and so I wanted to clarify how I feel about things. I've received emails, letters, both in support and in opposition to what I said. Some have been hurtful. Most have been very supportive. You can go back and listen to that tape, and several times in my talk, I said I think that we have an excellent public safety department. Not just once, more than once. And yet somehow, either people who were listening or second-handed or third-handed felt that I said I was against and did not support the police department. I think anyone who has followed my record here on the board for as long as I've been on the board know that I support the police. Unfortunately, I think that both our society and Jonesborough, we've become an either-or feelings. Either if you're for the police, then you're against social justice and protest. If you're for social justice and protest, you're against the police. There's nothing farther from the truth than that. When you look, let me talk first about how I feel about demonstrations. 100 years ago, all the women in there sitting here couldn't vote. 60 years ago, most of the schools were segregated. There were times when children were forced to work in mines and factories were an unsafe place to work. Many people with disabilities were not treated fairly and had a much less quality of life. LGBTQ people have been treated poorly. Through freedom of speech and protests, some of these things, many of these things have been improved, but we still need to improve them more, and that's what I was trying to say, and that's why peaceful protest is a part of the fabric of our country, and I hope we don't lose it. And I hope people that see it don't think everyone that's doing it's a looter. You notice I said peaceful protest. And that's important. Now, unfortunately, sometimes it gets out of hand. But most of the protesters are not looters, just like the vast majority of policemen are not bad. It shouldn't be an either or. Our public safety department employees in this past year 3 times won the Outstanding Employee of the Month. And they deservedly so. They did things that helped people and showed they cared. We have the Shop with a Cop at Christmas time. And we have Paws in Blue. My wife and I have helped with both of those, and will continue to. So somehow we've got to come together, and it's not an either-or proposition. Let's do what we ought to do, which is realize the importance of public safety, but also realize that there are things that need to be corrected in our society. And somebody has to take the leadership, and I would like it to be Jonesborough. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Terry. Well said. And, I've been on this board with Terry for a long time, and he's always been a supporter of our public safety and really our town staff. And we know what his intentions are towards our law enforcement, and that's 100% support. And, like anything else, every day we adapt to things. And I know from sitting with Chief Street and Mr. Ford and Glenn and all of us, you know, we're always looking to improve, and we've discussed some actions that we're going to take, you know, probably next month that'll, you know, be something, you know, written in black and white that we'll move forward on.
Oh, yeah, I forgot one thing. Glenn and I have talked quite a bit, and last time I requested a resolution for this time. And speaking with Glenn and the staff, I really have changed what I hope we do, and that is to have a list of action items that the town can do that can be brought to the board and voted on and hopefully approved, which are measurable. So next year, this time, we have measurable things that we can say that we accomplished. A resolution is nice, but it's not a month down the road, it really hasn't done anything.
Yeah, it's nice to read, and it kind of gives you a little.
And I trust
Yeah.
Glenn and the staff to do that. Thank you.
Yeah. We'll certainly be doing that, and I'm glad Terry brought that up, because I got one more thing to put out there. It kind of ties in with what Terry and all of us has talked about. Something I talked to Adam about, and I talked to Glenn, and my intention was to have that on the agenda for tonight. And but we through all the stuff going on, we didn't get on the agenda. But I've talked to Glenn, and I'm hoping that Alderman can support this. I'd mentioned that I'd like to have a community intern position created for our town hall. Be a position that the mayor would recommend somebody and our board would approve. And I've been talking to a young man that know a little bit. My family knows a little bit, but a lot of people that I respect that David Crockett High School know and speak highly of. And my hope is that this little intern position would be a chance for our young people to get into our town hall and work with Glenn, see Jim and Craig, and work with the staff here in town hall. And then you might see them going out and interning at the McKinney Center, and then they go intern with our park and rec people. They get involved in some of our events. But it's really, young people need to know how our town works. And that's going to be the purpose of this. And I've talked to Ron Quill Joyner about being that intern for us, and he's excited about doing that. And I thought, Alderman, if you would approve this intern position, it's going to ask the staff to include this in our budget. And it's a nominal cost for the year of about $12,480, and this will be a 6-month term for our intern with a chance to renew for an additional 6 months, and then we would rotate that each year. But the goal is to really get our young people involved in government and let them see what we do here. Let them see what our public safety does. Let them see the good things that our town does. So, Alderman, I know we touched on this a little bit last week, but if someone would make a motion to approve this intern position and ask Glenn and them to put this into our budget next year, and we'll clean up the job description and the requirement. It'll be something that myself and Glenn, I think, and Craig would kind of schedule. But my vision is each week this intern would work in a different area of our town, and we won't put them in any danger or anything like that. But I want them to learn and see how our town works. And Ron Quill is excited about doing it. He was sending me messages, and he was actually going to be here tonight. And I said, well, it didn't get on the agenda. It might be next week. But if we can get this approved, I'll make sure he's here next week, and we can talk to him some more once we get our budget discussions going.
I
Maybe he
think
would need to add that to the agenda before it was discussed.
Okay, that item, the community intern, would someone make a motion to add that to the agenda, please?
Make a motion to add it to the agenda.
Okay, may I have a second, please?
I'll second, Mayor.
Got a second from Alderman Dixon, motion from Alderman Callahan. Some discussion, please?
I think it's a great idea of what you're saying, but I think we need a job description of what we're going to expect of that person,
Yeah.
and we need to make sure that we can fund it in the next year's budget
Yeah, that's
before we go forward and say we're going to hire this person.
that'll be part of the motion to approve this position, is to come up with a clean job description, and we will do that. But I'd like to get this intern position approved tonight, so Glenn and them know. Glenn, is there an issue with this, you think?
I think one thing you did say was contingent upon if Budget and passing the budget.
Right.
Which we're getting closer. And then the job description, we can have that as well. So we can tie in the job description and the budget at the same time.
So I'd like to ask the motion to include directing staff to do just that. Any other discussion?
The job description will have to come back to the
Yes.
board.
Right.
So I guess the order would be, we'll work on the job description, and of course, the budget item will come before the board for approval of the budget.
Right.
You know, Ron Keel is an outstanding young man, African-American young man. Very sharp, very talented. He will start ETSU as a Rhodes Scholar, and so the local community is very proud of him and his accomplishments. Star athlete, very good in his studies, and just a very positive role model all the way around. My hope is that as we're having this conversation, of course, I know that the times are contentious, and I applaud Mayor Vest for thinking this way. I hope that we have some kind of mind about the future, trying to identify other young men and women like a Ron Keel, and trying to cultivate that. You know, you don't find a young man like Ron Keel every day. And so, so I hope that as we create this position, that we'll be focused and trying to cultivate more young men like Ron Keel, because, like I said, very, very sharp young man, and I think he's quite deserving. So I'm glad to see this.
All right, thank you, Adam. And that's I agree. This is be one intern position starting out, but I can envision this probably leading to 2 or even 3 down the road. But we need to get young people involved, and in many ways, if someone comes in here with the talent that Adam speaks of, the idea when they get out of ETSU, they might say, "Man, I love my time in downtown in Jonesborough, and I'm gonna go down there and work." And that's the whole idea behind that. So, Adam, I appreciate that. So can I get a motion to approve this position and send to Glenn and them to create the job description and work it into the budget?
I think you've got a motion on the floor
We gotta
to,
accept the amendment.
Okay,
or to add it to the agenda.
add it to the agenda. All right. Call for the vote, Madam Recorder, to add this to the agenda.
Alderman Callahan.
Aye.
Alderman Dixon.
Aye.
Alderman Causey.
Aye.
Alderman Countermine.
All right, motion carried. Now we'll go into a motion to approve the intern position, send it to Glenn to work into our budget, and come back with a job description and board to approve.
So move.
Motion to approve from Alderman Callahan. I'm looking at Jim down there. He's shaking his head like he's thinking, okay, is Chuck doing this right? Got a motion to approve from Alderman Callahan. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Got a second from Alderman Countermine. Any discussion?
Would this be subject to funding availability?
Of course, just like the last position was.
It should be added to the agenda,
Yeah.
or added to the.
Yep, it will be.
To the motion.
Any other discussion? Call for the vote, please.
Alderman Callahan.
Aye.
Alderman Countermine.
Aye.
Alderman Causey.
Aye.
Alderman Dixon.
Aye.
All right, appreciate you, Alderman. One important thing there, Ron Quill, I think he's working up the boys club right now, and he kind of needs a little bit of a heads up if this is, where we want to move towards, and I wanted to be able to give him, hey, we just got to get into our budget, and in August it'll be finalized, and so I appreciate you, Alderman, and thank you, Adam, for the good work.
We'll just go ahead when we work on the job description, we'll leak it to
Okay.
you guys to have the chance to review in case we miss something that you want to add or subtract to it before it comes to the board, so get you guys input, comments.
All right, great.
Coffee. Get Chuck lots of coffee. That's in there,
Yeah.
I don't think no coffee.
No, I can't do
No
coffee
coffee,
anymore.
man. No
That
coffee.
was aggravating.
Yeah,
Yes, I had
it's
to give up
fired if he
coffee.
gets Chuck coffee. Yeah.
It was recommended I could have 1 glass of wine because of my heart condition, but I found out when I have that first one, I end up having 2, maybe then 3. Then I thought, okay, this is not good. So I'm giving up wine and coffee. Even decaffeinated coffee was kind of affecting me some. All right. Next item on the agenda is our town attorney comments. Jim, you got anything you'd like to bring up there? I know we put you to work a little bit last couple weeks. I know you was on vacation, but we sent you to.
Busy time before, and I found out that I probably talked to Mr. Rosenoff about as much as I used to talk to Mr. Browning when I was on vacation, so it looks like that's going to continue.
Does he talk less though? Does he get to the point faster?
Yeah, he did. We did have shorter conversations, I would have to say. But, and I'd like to ask you all to remember all the months that I give you short reports, because this month's not going to be quite as short. But, first of all, we spent a lot of time on COVID issues this month, and a lot going on with that. And of course, that changes as we go through this. But also, a lot went on this month with the school project. Happy to report to you that we received the letter of conditions last week, and Mr. Browning quickly grabbed the mayor down here, got the paperwork signed, and got Mr. Rosenoff in the loop, and then got it back out. So right now, USDA is in the process of locking in the rate and the money, committing the money. So that is a major milestone in this, and very pleased where we are with that. The next step will be the two resolutions you're going to look at in new business tonight, and you'll also be hearing from Mr. Rick Delaney, who's been a major force in this from the very beginning. He was one of the first two calls that Bob made after we sat down and started talking about doing this. And we're pleased to have him here tonight, and you'll hear from him, I'm sure, in a little bit. We appreciate Raymond James and everything they've done with Mr. Delaney put us in touch with their USDA folks in Kentucky, and they've been a big help with this being being a highly unusual method and way of doing it. And then lastly, and this will take just a few minutes, but one of the things that came up the last few weeks, this came up rather quickly. We had to deal with it fairly quickly, but we had a request to look at a church in the community making a gift to each member of the police department to show their support to them. But when I was brought into this, which was probably within the first 24 hours, the district attorney had already been contacted. The district attorney indicated he found nothing at issue with this. I also went behind him and reviewed state law and didn't find anything that would prohibit this. And that was the question. This was a gift from the church to them individually, not through the town. And the money was not coming to the town, which would have been a totally different situation. So we looked at our personnel policy. There was no issue there. And then we looked at our ethics policy. And with the ethics policy, there is a section on acceptance of gratuities. And so we needed to look at that as in the way it applies to employees. You need to understand that when we apply a policy to an employee, any ambiguity in the policy is resolved in favor of the employee. So the question that, as I discussed this with the town administrator, the legal question became, is there anything that prohibits an officer from accepting this gift? Well, we looked closely at the ethics policy. Our ethics policy was adopted several years ago by the board. It's standard. There were model policies put out at the time that these were required by the state. Our policy is much like that of most cities throughout the state and counties for that matter. There is a section on acceptance of gratuities. It is what I call a limited prohibition. It allows for certain gifts to be accepted, and this board can change that policy at any point if you want to, but what I had to go on was the policy that we have, which again is fairly standard across the state. That policy is designed, and the reason it's a limited prohibition is that it does allow for some things to happen. A good example that I didn't know you were going to bring up tonight, I had not heard about that email, but is the cake that the lady wanted to provide. Of course, that was not the reason they weren't able to accept it out there. That was the concern about what might be in it. But you know, that's what a limited prohibition does. It's allow for certain things to be accepted. So the language dealing with what cannot be accepted is a gift that would be for the performance of an act, single act, or refraining from the performance of an act that he or she would be expected to perform or refrain from performing the regular course of his or her duties. I found no indication that there was an act that was being requested or that was being requested not happen with respect to this gift. The second prong of that, which there's an or between the two, that might reasonably be interpreted as an attempt to influence his or her action or reward him or her for past action in executing town business. The key word there, I think, is reasonably. When we look at anything like this, we're looking at that as what would reasonably be interpreted. I'm going to cut this short, but I may be talking to you again. There have been some questions raised about this. I stand by the opinion that I gave the town administrator. The town administrator ultimately had to make the determination of whether there was any issue here. I don't believe there was any issue here with our ethics policy, and conveyed that to the town administrator. Ultimately, what he ended up deciding, but again, absolutely on my advice, was that this could not be reasonably interpreted as an attempt to influence an action. And I may wish to speak a little further to that a little later on in your meeting, but for now, that's what I would report to you.
Now, were you involved in talking to getting the district attorney's opinion, or is that?
No, that was done by the chief before they.
To you?
Probably during the time they were contacting me. By the time I got back to them, they had already heard back from the district attorney.
Okay.
But the district attorney's opinion was that there was nothing in state law. Of course, he would not have been looking at the municipal code and the policy. So I understood why he was not looking at that. That's where we took it a step further after I went back and also looked. And I did not find anything in state law that would prohibit it either. Not to say that we can't look at anything anybody wants to show us, but that's, as far as state law and municipal law, that's what I found.
All right, very good. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate your work. We have kept him busy the last year, at least, as I remember when we did. I think me and Jim and Bob drove down to Nashville to see Rick down there to kind of find out, hey, can we really get this financing thing pulled off? And then got great guidance from Rick and Raymond James down there. Okay. Now we're going to move into citizens' comments. If you're a resident of Jonesborough or one of our water customers out there, we'd love to hear your opinion, and ask that you take about 3 minutes or so. And anyone like to get up and address the board? Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Deborah Berger, and I live on East Main Street in Jonesborough. I have two pressing and strong objections to the acceptance by town employees of large private financial gifts. As Mr. Wheeler recently said, we do have an ethics policy, and our ethics policy states in Clause 2, a gift that might reasonably be interpreted as an attempt to influence or reward influence his or her action, or reward him or her for past action in executing town business. When we say thank you to someone with a large amount of money, that is that is a reward for their action in executing town business. That is not ambiguous. That is a reasonable, when someone gives $1,000 to a person as a thank you for their service, that is in reference to their past actions in executing town business. It also, without necessarily violating state law, it opens the door to innumerable conflicts and potential conflicts and appearances of conflict of interest. So the church building itself for Lighthouse Baptist Church is outside of Jonesborough Police jurisdiction. That's lovely. Is every member of that church a resident outside of Jonesborough town? We do not know. Do they never drive through Jonesborough? So next winter, months from now, Police stop someone for running a red light. That's what our police officers are supposed to do. Our police officer gets out of the car with his or her ticket book and approaches the driver and notices a decal on the car that says, "I'm a happy member at Lighthouse Baptist Church." This is an officer who received a $1,000 gift from that person to whom he is now supposed to write a ticket. There is an extreme potential for the appearance of conflict of interest in that situation. Or imagine two neighbors having a dispute. That guy's kid stole my kid's bike, and they call the police, and an officer shows up to arbitrate this dispute between neighbors. And in one of the neighbors' front yards is a sign advertising Vacation Bible School at Lighthouse Baptist Church. There is an incredible appearance of conflict of interest if this officer has received a $1,000 personal gift from that person's church. It is reasonable to expect that a gift certificate for a free cup of coffee or a $20 gift certificate to a local merchant is not influencing someone's behavior or rewarding particular behavior. But $1,000 in any small town budget, including ours, is a significant amount of money. It's money that talks. It's money that greases palms. It is the definition of corruption when public employees of public agencies, receive $1,000 gifts from private, non-town, non-authority sources. My second objection: having set this precedent and opened this door, even assuming none of my scenarios ever happen and there's never a conflict of interest and I'm just overreacting. Okay, the second problem is, having opened this door and set this precedent, what other departments, individual employees, will now receive large financial gifts from what other private organizations? Do we have a list? Do we have a policy? Could the Board of Realtors give $1,000 each as thank you for all the years of service of the members of the zoning board? Would that be acceptable? Could the KKK give $1,000 each to members of the fire department? Would that be acceptable? What private organizations will and will not be allowed to give large financial donations, not to a department, not for a program? Those would be constructive gifts to the community. But individual, large financial gifts, by definition, a gift, this is my last sentence, okay. By definition, a large financial gift to a public servant by a private entity is corruption. And I think you all need to think really hard about what kind of doors you have opened here. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. All right, anyone else? Jake? Give us your name and address, and we'll let Glenn clean that off there first.
You got it. I'm Jay Jarman. I live in Jonesborough. I won't give my address because this is being streamed over the internet. You can check the public record. I live here. I wanted to start out by saying that I do support our police department. I've had nothing but positive interactions with the officers, and I'm glad they support our community. However, words cannot express the disappointment I have in our town administration. It's the responsibility of town administration to prevent not only inappropriate behavior, but also the appearance of inappropriate behavior, and sadly, you've failed. Accepting money for the officers from the Lighthouse Missionary Baptist Church was wrong, and I think several of you know it. Washington County Sheriff's Department, based on my understanding, did not accept the money because they knew it was wrong, and it was against their ethics policy. Don't get me wrong, if I was one of those officers and somebody wanted to give me $1,000, I'd stand in line for it all day long. I do not blame them for this. I blame the town administration for this. I think the mere fact that you had to ask the city attorney if it was okay knows that it appears inappropriate. If it's okay for the church to give the gift, like Deb said, what happens if the Nazi Party wants to come into town and give a gift to the police department? what happens then? I'm asking you, right now. What happens then?
Yeah, it's a citizen's comments. I would, of course.
You
that'd
can't
be
answer it?
Me personally would be offended. I'm offended you even asked that question, but of course I would say no.
Why?
Well, I don't think this is just continue on, Jay.
Well, okay. If the church member, I'm not going to get into that. So this is done, and I think the damage is done, but I think this needs to change, and I want to see all of you do something to change this. The ethics policy needs to change so that this does not happen again. I'm disappointed you can't answer my question.
Yeah, well, I answered your question. I would not be in favor of that, but I don't think we need to bring up Nazi Party during this discussions. And if our board wishes to approve, change our policy, we would change our policy. We don't need to hype this up by making an accusation like Nazi Party, KKK. We're not that kind of people. If we need to.
You get to say yes to one and no to the other. How do you
Well-
decide who you say yes and who you say no to?
Well-
What is the list of private organizations that are allowed to make these large
That's-
financial gifts?
That's why this was inappropriate.
We've heard your opinion. I appreciate it. And anyone else, please? Caitlin?
I'm Caitlin Yarbrough. Again, what Jay said about the internet, I didn't even think about that, but you all know where to find me. It's on my shirt. I would like to address what Terry brought up in his comments at the last Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting. I tried to put something on paper several times, but I'm sure you all know that I've been quite busy in the Black Lives Matter movement in a positive way. So I appreciate the clarity that not all demonstrators are looters, rioters, arsonists, things of that manner. But I did want to read to you just a description of our organization that I've been elected the chair of and what our goals are and, in the end, what we would like to offer to the town of Jonesborough. Our group is working to set up a framework with the City of Johnson City currently, including the Johnson City Chief of Police, to implement better policies and procedures, which are included but not limited to forming a human rights accountability board that will weigh in and hold every department accountable under the city's jurisdiction, including but not limited to the Department of Education, Johnson City Police Department, zoning, sanitation, transportation, and more. We're seeking out and educating the community on representation of minorities and the importance of that at different levels. And we do already have at our use and resources of candidate training courses that have been whittled down. They're available via Zoom. So we're not just out saying things and then not following them up with actions. We are insisting on diversity, equity, and inclusion committees to assist in educating and retraining current employees. We are assisting in the execution of a child-friendly city initiative, which comes from UNICEF. It's something that the Johnson City municipalities already approved. They have room in their budget for it, and it's something that if they do receive this accreditation, it's going to require them to change laws that will, in the end, affect all citizens, because what's good for a child is going to be good for all. And I will happily give you more details on that. That will institute safe rights and more for children and young adults under the age of 18. Like I said, what's good for a child is good for anyone. We are collaborating with the NAACP, sometimes the New Panthers Initiative, the Tennessee Virginia Mutual Aid, and all sorts of local interfaith organizations to create programs that will turn out the vote and provide transportation as well. We are trying to promote and sustain the black dollar in our local economy and execute direct acts of solidarity, not charity, to our local communities. We started with 8 Can't Wait with the Johnson City Police Department, and we've already had 6 of those policies approved. Of course, some of them are already in motion. I appreciate that you are putting forward efforts to create some awareness and also hopefully a plan of action. Our group has just recently emailed the Sullivan County Volunteer Fire Department after the incident with the chalk and the woman that laid down in protest of it being washed away. I spoke with this woman. She does not want that firefighter to be fired, and there's a lot of miscommunication and misinterpretation of this movement. It's not about blocking out or boxing out any one person. This is a vehicle for betterment for all and equality. And so instead of firing someone that does something incorrectly, why not educate this person and have an open and peaceful dialogue on race and the importance of representation and knowing that your community is putting in place these policies and changing the way that they're doing things, which is difficult. Change is never an easy thing, and it also doesn't happen overnight. But I would like to extend the offer as the chair of the New Generation Freedom Fighters, and also as a biracial citizen of Jonesborough, that I would be more than happy to sit down with any of the town staff, officials, aldermen, and have that dialogue, because it is extremely important to me, and I know it's extremely important to others.
Well, it's important to our town, and I don't think he was here at our last meeting, but it was something I expressed, I think, in the Herald Tribune too, and to our board here. We didn't, or I know myself, and then my first phone call was to Mr. Ford, and then to Adam. When we saw what happened up there in Minnesota, we didn't. It was something I want to make sure would never come close to happening here in Jonesborough. And almost immediately the next day, I talked to Craig, and just to find out what we were doing in Jonesborough, if we were taking care of our citizens the way we were supposed to be taking care of them. And he and I started that dialogue there, and then I asked Adam if he would, work with me on that. So, we started immediately on that, because some of the things that you're so passionate about, we are as well. And so we've been working on that the entire time. And as Terry said, some of the things that he and Adam and others have brought forward, they're action points for us, and they'll be done. Some of the things that you're speaking of, are aligned real well with what we're looking to do.
Well, we're happy to help and extend any resources we have. Also, just a quick side note, verbiage in this movement is extremely important, and I'm not sure if anyone has seen all of my interviews, but I'm very quick to shoot down the word defundment of the police department. Instead, we should all be using the words reallocation, because the police departments have too much on their plate, and so instead of taking away funding, you need to use that funding to encourage training, which I did see that Chief Street gave a nice interview and said that there's always room for more training, especially with any police department. But I think that it's important that we always remember that there are synonyms to things, and some things are not synonyms at all, and word choice is very important.
Well, if our intention is to improve the safety of folks and improve the quality of town employees or police officers in the town of Jonesborough, I expressed that to Glenn and others that, in my opinion, just like in business, if I want to have the best retail store in a market, then I go out and attract the best people. And if I have to pay more to get the best people, I'm going to get the best performance out of them. So the way I would look at it with our police force, if we have I want to make sure we've got 23 people that are going to perform the way we all expect them to. And if that means we pay a little bit more than another market, by gosh, we need to do it, because I want 23 out of 23 to be people we really love having on our force. Right now, I love the people we've got. I think you know that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
I got my keys out of my car last week.
Yeah.
I'm greatly appreciative for
And
that and much more.
Yeah,
I did have to call and ask for an extra drive-by because I have received threats.
And it's scary to think about what these guys do. We're in Jonesborough, and it's a lovely town, but we've got 30-some thousand cars coming down 11E. You don't know who's in them all. I fear these guys put those vests on every day, and they don't make a ton of money. And if you lose good people, you're going to replace them with some not quite so good, and you end up with problems like they had up in Minnesota and other places. And I hope here in the town of Jonesborough, and I hope we always have a board when we're gone. I hope we always have a board that says we're going to protect our people. And if that means we have to pay a little more to have the best, then we need to have the best, because the consequences are too great not to have the best. So I appreciate what you do, and I know you did some great work on our census, so I'm gonna brag on you a little bit there. Caitlin was really important. I've mentioned it before. It's important that our town gets the amount of dollars from our federal government that we're entitled to, and the people of Jonesborough have been signing up for the census great, and we've been really leading the region the entire time on performance of that, and we need that to continue. And it's so important when you talk about funding. It's important. So,
Thank you.
thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you, Kate.
All right, anyone else? Thought Glenn was gonna get up and speak. He's a new member of Jonesborough. We probably should welcome
The
him.
attorney is was doing this. That's how difficult it is.
All right. All right, well, thank you all. Appreciate that. And, all right. We will now move into old business. Discussion and possible action concerning second and final reading of an ordinance rezoning property at 152 Headtown Road from R1 low density residential to B3 arterial business and R1 low density residential to B6 corridor business. And we had that public hearing about that. That's our Weigel's location. Alderman, any comments about that? If not, I'll take a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve from Alderman Countermine,
I'll second, Mayor.
second from Alderman Dixon. Any discussion? Call for the vote, please.
Alderman Countermine.
Aye.
Alderman Dixon.
Aye.
Alderman Callahan.
Aye.
Alderman Hudson.
All right, very good. Moving closer to having a good little new business here. That'll be a good business for Jonesborough. Next item on the old business agenda is discussion and possible action concerning approval of a GIS water mapping system for our water distribution department. And that's always important. When we put a fire hydrant out there, we need to know where to go find it. Ain't that right? Sometimes you lose those things, if you go off memory. And they are, and I do like the plan that's presented right here. There's some fees in there. We probably should have been collecting them for a while that we need to collect to offset some things. Alderman, you got any comments about that? If not, I'll take a motion to approve.
I make a motion subject to funding being available.
All right, we got a motion to approve subject to funding.
Second.
Got a second from Alderman Countermine. Any discussion? All right, very good. Call for the vote, please.
Alderman Causey.
Aye.
Alderman Countermine.
Aye.
Alderman Callahan.
Aye.
Alderman Dixon.
Aye.
All right, thank you, Alderman.
That was particularly related to the intern?
The intern.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right, next, let's see, I think we're supposed to pull, Stephen, do we want to pull 6C, I think, right?
I think we're gonna leave it in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, discussion and possible action concerning approval of an amendment to the special event application for the Victory Motorcycle Club Rally. I think what we want to do there, it's much safer closing our streets right there so we can spread out. So Alderman, I think you saw that motion.
I'd like to, I'll go ahead and recuse myself from the vote, Mayor.
Okay, very good. Alderman, you got any comments on that? It's just, we had a little thing there where we approved the event. At that time, we were doing music on the square, so the street was going to be closed. And we certainly don't want to have an event and not have our street closed because it makes congestion, so we want to spread people out and do all that. Glenn, you got a comment there, please?
Just to add in, I know it has in there includes plans to maximize health and safety, but we'll continue to monitor COVID-19 and any CDC recommended actions or inactions. So we'll continue to monitor it through
Very good.
that event.
Just like we would all. I appreciate that.
Is movies on Main?
Thank you.
What?
Is movies on Main still going on at this time?
Cameo, would movies on Mains be behind the courthouse then? I guess it would be.
In August, it was only approved for July.
Okay. Dang, I like that.
But it
We'll
might
see.
might go on, right?
We might bring it back after the rally or something.
You guys decide.
Yeah.
Just prove it.
All right.
Good answer.
But it's like I said during our block party, the important thing there, we didn't have a need to, the amount of what we were doing down there was very minimal. But, closing those streets allows you to spread out down there, and we need to be thinking along those lines when we do things. So that's kind of what this is addressing.
I think I agree with Glenn because we've got to watch what's going on. At our last meeting, at that time, there were 2 active cases in Washington County, and now there's something like 140. So whatever we were hoping we were doing isn't working. So,
Yeah, we basically have no choice but to.
yeah, if things get bad, I think we really got to look at.
Well, we got August for that. If things, hopefully, some people are saying 2 weeks or so, but
No,
we'll,
I'm
I
not-
guess we'll see. But, yeah.
I agree, outside things are definitely more safer, but
Yep.
it's scary right now.
I think our next meeting is August 10th.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, so
We're
things,
still
any
trying to report on
any event we hold is all subject to something changing out there, and so we will proceed with caution there. It's just any other comments there? If not, I can take a motion to approve closing Main Street for this event.
I'll make the motion, subject to the CDC guidelines being followed.
Sounds fair?
I'll second that.
All right, we've got a motion to approve subject to CDC guidelines. We're going to let Glenn and them interpret that and get back with the board. We got a motion to approve from Alderman Causey, second from Alderman Countermine. Any other discussion? Call for the vote, please.
Alderman Causey.
Aye.
Alderman Countermine.
Aye.
Alderman Dixon.
Aye.
All right, very good. Thank you, Alderman. All right, that's all our old business. Now we'll move into some new business, and this is big new business. It's a difference maker for our town of Jonesborough, difference maker for our young people, and difference maker for the next 30, 40 years in Jonesborough. So long after we depart these places. It's discussion and possible action concerning an initial bond resolution and bond anticipation note for the Jonesborough K-8 school project. And the amount of this loan is $32,750,000, and we're hoping to design this and come through under that. We'll see. And the term is expected by the county to be about 30 years. Of course, that'll be up to them to determine. Rural Development and the USDA has approved Jonesborough's application for funding to build the school and related facilities, and they are prepared a letter of conditions, which is Rural Development's verification that the funding is obligated. And the current percent, this is good news for our county, this is really good news for the county, current interest rate is 2.25, and when we got this approved it was at 3%, and there's always some risk at that point. Our economy was pretty hot, and when your economy is hot, sometimes that interest rate goes up. And but unfortunately, I guess you would say, we've had some of this stuff come up, and it really has caused the interest rate to go down. We couldn't have predicted it, but it's going to allow the county to have a little bit more revenue to do some other things for some other schools possibly. But 2.25 interest rate is great. As Jim said, I signed part of this. This is mostly, a lot of this is about getting that interim financing going, because we need to pay some bills and buy some land and all that. And we got Rick Delaney here. Rick, do you mind to get up here and give us a little recap on all your involvement and what all this means to folks?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Rick Delaney with Raymond James in Nashville. As the mayor and Glenn has indicated, and Jim, we've been working, I guess, on this project for you all for, well, about a year now, I guess. And there's been a lot of activity, a lot of creative energy, I think, put on the table, and creative thought generated in a lot of quarters to make this happen. Fortunately, it looks like it's all coming together in a positive sense. And we're ready, I guess, really for the next step. We were waiting for the letter of conditions from the USDA, which is really their commitment to fund the loan. And then going forward, also, they're really permission to do the interim financing in order to, as you pointed out, Mr. Mayor, to pay some bills. I think there are 2 resolutions here. The initial resolution is a resolution required by state law. Basically outlines what the project is and the source of payment. Source of payment here, of course, first of all, security is the general obligation pledge of the town, but that the source of payment, although not the security, is the lease agreement between the town and Washington County. And I'll defer to Jim on some of the particulars there, but I think that's pretty solid lease. A lot of energy and brain cells were burned up in that process, coming to what I think is really a solid document and a solid agreement with the county in order to get this funded. So the first resolution is that initial resolution. It gets published one time in the newspaper. There's a 20-day period if there's somebody wanted to challenge whether this should happen or not. Jonesborough residents only, of course, could do so by filing a petition. The second resolution is the broader bond anticipation note resolution, and basically it's a standard form. The idea here is we've been sort of going back and forth as interest rates have changed as to the method that we would use. I think that where we are right now is we're looking at a traditional construction loan through a commercial bank, drawdown facility. As we need it, we would draw it down, obviously pay for what you take down. One of the indications that I received talking to a large regional bank that has a nice presence in Northeast Tennessee was the interest rate on that construction loan would be somewhere in the 1.50% range on a fixed rate basis, and then on a variable rate kind of transaction, it could be as low as 120 based upon sort of a formula that would use. What we would do would be to entertain comments from various banks. Many is the more the merrier. Try to sort through that with terms and conditions and come up with the best deal possibly with the least amount of exposure, I guess, from the town's perspective, and the most flexibility that we possibly could get. Obviously, this is a big transaction in every respect, and we look forward to sort of working with you on that. I defer to Jim just a little bit because there is, with the next step here, obviously the USDA needs to sign off and say go to it, but they will probably have a condition or two just as far as exposure is concerned. And I would defer to Jim to maybe outline some of that because it's an important thing. Obviously with respect to whatever exposure there is here and how the lease reads and so forth. Jim, I'll turn it over to you.
You know, and we've, from the very beginning, we've tried to structure this with as little exposure to the town as possible, and we have, through the lease, you know, the county is bound to make these payments at any point. If the county decided they were not going to move forward, they're bound to pay any debt that we've incurred. With the letters of condition, there are some things that the USDA has come back and asked us to change in the primarily. I don't know that the lease document, if it contains any changes, they're minor. There's some things in the interlocal agreement that will change if we go forward with USDA. Those will go back not only to you all, but to the county commission and the school board. So we'll discuss those further a little down the road when we get ready to present that. That has been part of working with USDA, and that has been anticipated by both the county's attorney and the school board's attorney, that there would be some conditions that USDA would want us to tweak some language. So that's where we are with that. Tonight, we're going to need you to approve these resolutions, and Mayor, we'll need you to read the entire caption of both resolutions, and they'll need to be taken up one at a time.
Okay. The initial resolution we do first?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. The initial resolution authorizing the issuance of a note, issuing of a, it says not, but it's note to exceed, not to exceed,
it's not.
Issuance of a not to exceed $32,750,000 general obligation bond of the town of Jonesborough, Tennessee, to provide funding for certain public works projects and to fund the incidental and necessary expenses related thereto.
And that is, you need to be sure you're looking at the resolutions that were on the table for you this evening. The ones that came out in the packet, the only difference is that the date has been filled in for the building lease agreement. And when those were provided by the bond council last week, I was out of town, so we inserted that today when I got back.
Okay, so we got the first thing on the initial resolution. Alderman, you got any comments? If not, I'll take a motion to approve this first resolution.
Move to approve, Mayor.
Second.
Got a motion to approve from Alderman Dixon and a second from Alderman Countermine. Alderman, any other discussion? Okay, very good. Call for the vote, please.
Alderman Dixon.
Aye.
Alderman Countermine.
Aye.
Alderman Callahan.
Aye.
Alderman Collins.
All right, very good. Motion carried. Now we'll go into our next resolution. Resolution authorizing the issuance and providing details of a general obligation bond anticipation note in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $32,750,000, authorizing the sale thereof and providing for the payment of such note. Alderman, I'll take a motion to approve that resolution.
So moved.
Motion to approve from Alderman Countermine,
Second.
second from Alderman Callahan. Any other discussion, Alderman? All right, very good. Call for the vote, please.
Alderman Countermine.
Aye.
Alderman Callahan.
Aye.
Alderman Causey.
Aye.
Alderman Dixon.
Aye.
All right, very good. That motion carried.
Thank you.
We'll
Thank-
continue to work on this and try to bring it home as soon as we possibly can. Obviously, everybody's interested when we get the ground broken and new school coming out of the ground and solving a lot of issues that the community's faced for a number of years.
That's right. We can't afford to build it without this. So, one thing for our town residents, one of the first things that I said when we entered into this is that this could not harm the town of Jonesborough financially, and if anything, we should benefit from it, not just benefit from, more young families with kids, calling Jonesborough home, because we got to have them. If not, 20, 30 years from now, what are we going to be left with? We need to have young families moving here, and education is so important. And right now, Jonesborough's really at a disadvantage over new schools in Johnson City. You got new schools in Boones Creek. You got a nice Grandview school, and we're here, and we are, as a town, at a disadvantage. And this was really important to the town's next 30, 40 years. So it's big, but we entered this not wanting to put the town at risk. And as Jim said, this agreement pretty well means that we're covered, and so the residents should feel good about it. And there's a benefit beyond the tax revenue that might come in from property taxes and sales taxes. We're going to be managing the athletic facilities and things like that, and we're going to be able to utilize those, and we're going to look at ways to get that job done and come out of this with a little bit of revenue to pay for something else, I guess. All right, anything else, Jim, on that?
No, sir.
All right, very good. Thank you, Alderman. Now, a discussion and possible action concerning a resolution authorizing the town to participate in the Public Entity Partners, Safety Partners Matching Grant Program. All right. Let's approve a resolution authorizing a grant application for $2,000. Alderman, you got any comments about that? If not, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Got a motion to approve from Alderman Causey, a close second by Alderman Callahan. Any other discussion? All right, call for the vote, please.
Alderman Causey.
Aye.
Alderman Callahan.
Aye.
Alderman Countermine.
Aye.
Alderman Dixon.
Aye.
All right, very good. It is hard sometimes. I always say we got like a law firm up here. We got Callahan, Causey, Countermine, and Dixon up here. It's and they do good work. Yep. And they work. They're very affordable too. All right. Next item on the agenda is discussion and possible action concerning approval of a certificate of compliance related to wine sales for Main Street Groceries and Tobacco at 614 West Main Street. I have a little, just a little comment on that. I don't know if it applies to this, but that location there, I don't know if we've addressed it, but I tell you, if they're in compliance with our sign ordinance, I'll be surprised. And we really need to look at that. And
I get complaints all the time.
yeah, and I don't know if it's. I'll let you, Alderman. You all have the floor here somewhat, but.
So they're totally in compliance with food sales? Is that correct? Do we know that for sure?
Yeah, how do you verify these, Jim? Is it? I guess it's. I think everywhere it's more of just somewhat of the ABC. I guess verifies this somewhat, but it's.
That would. That's not something you're certifying.
Yeah.
That would be up to the ABC to determine. They can audit. But that does not mean they audit in every case. I do not know whether you can request that an applicant be audited, but all you're certifying is what's on the certificate, which does not include that.
Can we put in there that approved if they're in compliance with our sign ordinance?
I think it's a great idea.
You can direct staff to look into it.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to look into it.
Please
Yeah.
do.
Well, you know, if signs, we have a sign ordinance that limits the amount of signage.
Yes.
And if somebody puts, if somebody rotates signs in and out, that's one thing, but when they plant them on there and they stay on there, and that's out of compliance.
Yeah.
And if you approve them to sell,
We'll review it.
okay.
I don't know that we can hold back on the certificate. We'll look at that. If it says, are they in compliance with all, so I don't have the actual certificate in front of me, but we'll look at that. If we can, we will. If not, we can still pursue the sign issue separate from this if we need to.
Zoning is typically gonna be the use permitted through that zoning district.
Well, we got
Versus, is there signage in compliance with our sign regulations? But if you wanna, not necessarily put subject to, but direct staff to.
Okay.
see what we have.
Well, we do have Callahan, two members of our law firm, Callahan and Countermine, on the planning commission. They can keep an eye on that signage because they approve some of that stuff. So I'm comfortable with whatever the board decides there.
So even if we approve it, it still has to go to the ABC.
Right.
Correct. And so
You're correct there. We're validating certain information, but ABC comes in based on even their use, they're confirming the square footage, for retail space. They physically go to that location and measure.
They do have a beer permit, and it is in our purview to look at their food sales related to the beer permit. Typically, when somebody's got both, we don't have to do much of that because ABC's looking at that, and
Sure.
they do look more at the ongoing receipts. But we certainly would have the right under the beer regulation is up to us, and we do have the ability to look at that.
Okay.
So move to approve the certificate, but then ask the staff to look at the sign ordinance and food sales.
I would like to know what their food sales are because I have trouble believing it's 30%.
Okay.
Is that okay, Jim? Good motion? Who made that motion? Was that? That was
moved.
motion by Alderman Dixon to approve. Second by Alderman Countermine with the conditions expressed by Alderman Dixon. Any other comments, Alderman? Now call for the vote, please.
Alderman Dixon.
Aye.
Alderman Cowan.
Aye.
Alderman Callahan.
Aye.
Alderman Cosman.
Aye.
All right, very good. Motion carried. Now move into discussion and possible action concerning approval of facility rental rates and cleaning fees at our Visitor Center and McKinney Center. And we'll take those, I guess, separately since we got two separate ones there. Alderman, if you got any, comments about the Visitor Center rates and things there, I just had one thing that I will express. We kind of did this at our wetlands years ago, and it meant we started making some money down there. It's just, one thing I read, the last update on rental rates for facilities was back in September of 2014, which is nearly 60 years ago. And believe me, costs have increased in the past 6 years. So really direct this to Glenn, is that we need to look at this every year, every 2 years to make sure we're keeping up with the cost of performance in our rental facilities. And really, unfortunately, cost does go up. Our labor costs go up. So let's make sure, whether it's at the Visitor Center, McKinney Center, and any other facility, we just don't get complacent and let something go that long.
Glenn, you've discussed all this with both the Visitor Center and the McKinney Center staff.
Yes, they collaborated on it together in their presentations, and I was agreeable to all theirs. The only difference between the two, as far as looking at it, is with the COVID-19 and the comprehensive approach to having to clean, the Visitor Center included that in theirs. And I was talking to Alderwoman Causey, and that might be something when we get to McKinney
Very good. Alderman, you all got any comments about the visitor center rental rates and cleaning fees?
We're good to go.
I'll take a motion then.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve from Alderman Callahan,
Second.
second from Alderman Causey. Any other discussion? All right, call for the vote, please.
Alderman Callahan.
Aye.
Alderman Causey.
Aye.
Alderman Kelleher.
Aye.
Alderman Dixon.
Aye.
All right, motion carried. Thank you, Alderman. All right, next one on there is the McKinney Center. Just same comment there. We went too long on that, but Alderman, you got any comments about the things listed there? It sounds like we might need to have some of the language from our visitor center entered into the McKinney Center. Virginia, you want to speak on that?
I think we should just add the same thing we had for the.
Yeah.
Put the same requirements of the visitor center and the McKinney Center. Does that sound okay, Glenn?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll take a motion for that.
So moved.
Motion to approve that with the addition of the cleaning fees comparable to the visitor center from Alderman Causey. Need a second, please?
Second.
Second from Alderman Countermine. Any other discussion? All right, call for the vote, please.
Alderman Causey.
Aye.
Alderman Kelleher.
Aye.
Alderman Callahan. Alderman Dixon.
Aye.
All right, very good, thank you. And I tell you, I think both staffs at the visitor center and McKinney Center did great work on those rates, and really, it's just they need to treat those like a business, and every year or so evaluate their cost. All right, this next one, I like this next one. Discussion and possible action concerning approval of a large meter policy and guidelines. Sounds like we missed a few things there too, and we're cleaning up. We'll start. We got the fees in there, I think, for some of these large meters that we might have been either undercharging or not charging for. Is that right, Kevin?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you want to come speak to that and educate us on these big meters, I guess.
Try to anyway.
Just want to make sure real quick we don't have a typo
Okay.
on this. Every one of these fees have went up by 500. This one by 15. Is that?
That's because the price of the meter is higher. Once you start getting up to 10 and 12-inch meters, the cost of the meter is higher.
I see this one's still, this one's $500 more than this one. All of them are $500 more outside, but this one's 15.
Yeah.
Mayor, if you would,
Okay.
on the last page of that before Mr. Brobeck speaks, that 10-inch fire line service, that inside the city limits rate is $24,000, and then the outside rate is $25,500.
It should be 24.
It should be $24,500. I missed that, so that's a typo there, but that's my mistake. But
So-
that should be $24,500 on the outside.
So in each case, it's just $500 more than inside.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I noticed that.
Just one question. Where
Sure.
are these types of services located at? Where will we find these?
Well, all your businesses and anything commercial is supposed to have a fire line. And I found when I came here a couple of years ago, almost now, a lot of our businesses, commercial, they don't have no fire line meters. So that opens up a door for them. I'm not saying that they do, but it does open up a door for water loss issues as far as tapping in and using it for other things. So, you know, let's take, for instance, Food City. Food City's got a 6-inch fire line going to their building. It's not metered. All they have is a 1.5-inch meter going in front. That's metered. At any point in time, a plumber could go in there and make a tap, and they could use it for anything, and we wouldn't know. This motel right here has got a fire line, 3-inch fire line going in. It's not metered. Lowe's has a fire line going in. It's not metered. So that's potential revenue loss for us as a town. And I'm trying to correct this stuff. And obviously, we can't go back and make them put a meter in, but we can start now and start putting in meters, any of these fire line meters. And I drew up a policy, in my professional opinion, and doing this myself when I was in Johnson City. Of course, I know y'all have read that policy. And it's something that we need to do for the town of Jonesborough, for our water system. So we can track, unaccounted water that we've got going on. It ties right into our meter change-out program, or large meter change-out program, or small meter change-out program that we're actively working on. And this is a big thing. And I think the last plan we got was for a storage facility over here next to Food City that's fixing to go in, and they're getting ready to buy one because they're being made to put one in. And I think the new EMS and fire station down on Stockyard Road will have to get one too. So, and that price, I mean, for years we've been charging $3,950 for a 6-inch fire line tap. The meter itself is almost $9,000. So, you know, we've lost money, but you know, we're trying to fix it, and we will fix it with your all's blessing and help. We'll get this took care of, and we'll do it the right way. Okay?
Yeah, it's a great example of you know, why you're here, and we certainly appreciate that.
Sure.
Is there any way to address, you know, the ones that don't have them? How are we going? Is there a way to ensure that we're not having water loss in those areas?
Not unless we put a meter in.
Okay.
And that's something that we can discuss, you know, with Lowe's, with Food City. Of course, it might be where Mr. Ford and Mr. Rosenoff come in, and maybe even you guys, you know, discussing that with the property owners, the commercial business about that. You know, it's something that we need to address because that's unaccounted water that we don't know where it's going, how much is being used, and that affects us, you know, as far as our water loss report that goes into the state every year.
Yeah.
Maybe if we could do like a price match, you know, since they already have it and it's kind of our fault they don't have one to begin with, we could
Absolutely.
call them and say, hey, look, we'll pay a percentage up front if you can get in compliance with us, kind of thing. What do you think?
Yeah, you know, there's a lot.
Is there a benefit for them to have these meters?
Well, not really, no. I mean, it benefits them not to have the meter, obviously, for obvious reasons. So, and there's a lot of businesses in town that does not have those. It does have a fire line.
Yeah, and it's asking a lot of, you know, some of the smaller ones
Yeah.
are affordable, and I'm sure
Yes.
some of our bigger retailers possibly could handle that, but I'm sure giving
and
up
like
20
the-
grand is not going to be easy.
Right, you know, and like the 6-inch, which is the most typical for a business, new business going in, you know, it's 15.5 outside, 15 inside. You got to figure that's the tap and saddle, that's the tap and valve, and that's the line getting over to the property line. And if we have to bore under the road, that means we have to, you know, get our machine out, our directional bore machine, and go out in our time. So all that together, I mean, plus the meter's about 9,000.
Yeah.
And of course, y'all read how now the business, they're responsible for the vault. We assemble the meter, and we deliver the meter, and a contractor installs the meter. But that price is fair, and you know, that's the price of the valve, the pipe, the tap and saddles, and the meter. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Kevin, and
No problem.
we'll work on it. Craig, you got something for us?
Just one other quick thing, Mayor. At some point in time, this certainly may be something that we want to look at for cost. As he said, you know, you kind of take everyone at their word that they're doing the right thing, and certainly we hope they are, and that's the premise we're going on at this point, because that should have been done up front. But one of the things you have to consider too in Upper East Tennessee especially, and with a lot of these large buildings, you're on slab construction, which means, you know, you could have a shift in concrete or ground or something along those lines, and actually even develop a leak on that line that is not metered, that could leak for years and they not know that. And of course, one of the big problems for any municipal water system is you hear the term water loss all the time, and the big issue for a water system is the unaccounted for water loss. As an example, you know, the fire hydrants are not metered. So we have several volunteer fire departments, including Jonesborough Fire Department, that, you know, may hook up to those hydrants on a monthly basis and use several million gallons of water. They are to report that. So that's water it's a water loss, but it's accounted for. We can show where that goes. Well, when you have situations like this that's unmetered, and you had a water line break or something that maybe leaked through a crevice for several years, it's unaccounted for. You have no, you know, there's a leak or there's a water loss somewhere, but you have no idea where. If that meter was there, obviously that would show up rather quickly that you have that leak, and it could be repaired.
And those large meters do have a smaller meter for a small flow. So if the leak or whatever is a small, the 6 is obviously not going to register that small of a leak, but it does have a 3/4 inch meter bypass on it that registers small amount of leak too. So it sort of covers itself in that aspect.
It's certainly something that we're not going to quit growing. We're going to continue to have commercial development, and certainly something that we need to do. So, Alderman, you got any comments? If not, I'll take a motion.
Motion to approve.
All right. We got a motion to approve from Alderman Callahan, a second from Alderman
Thanks, Kevin.
Halsey. Any other discussion? Call for the vote, please.
Alderman Callahan.
Aye.
Alderman Causey.
Aye.
Alderman Calderon.
Aye.
Alderman Dixon.
Aye.
All right, very good. We've got low property taxes here, but I'm sure our commercial developers there will sign up and get that meters now.
Yep.
All right, next item on the agenda is discussion and possible action concerning approval of the items for the police department. First item is very fortunate to have the opportunity for the COPS grant and Governor's Local Government Support Grant. You got the recommendations. This is probably, I guess, Glenn's verbiage here. Is therefore recommending the Board of Mayor and Aldermen approve the COPS grant. In addition, I'm recommending approval of the Governor's Local Government Support Grant in the amount of $150,000 to be earmarked for the cost of the police equipment, and additional $5,000 in the local budget appropriation for the remainder. And this is just, the federal government. This is a federal program, if I'm not mistaken. That forget who the president was that started this. Was it Clinton that started the COPS program? Yes, President Clinton started. Opportunity for us to have some costs of our police officers offset, and it allows us to have a larger police force, but safer police force, and defer those costs as much as we can.
Do we have to do them separately, or we can do them all together as staff rec, or?
It's, the matter there, James, we do number one first, the COPS grant.
I think you can actually do both of these at the same time, the full recommendation.
I have a concern. I
Okay.
want to express.
All right, Virginia?
On the COPS grant, on the budget that was given, it was for and this ties in with the next item also. The policeman was supposed to start out at a step 3. They're recommending them to start out at a step 5 in the next agenda presentation, which makes our grant match 6831 or 32. And I feel that if the COP grant is for it to start out as step 3, that's what we should start our people out at.
I think the issue there was that the officers we have the opportunity of hiring, I think, are highly qualified. Is that right, Chief Street?
That's correct.
Do you want to speak to that,
And they're
Chief?
starting out more than they're making now, out of 3.
Yeah, I think I read that.
And I'm not against this COPS grant. I want you to know, I want the police officers. But I just think that we need to be cautious on our budget, because if we take them in at a 5, has Abby really looked to see how much more it's going to cost? It's not what has been presented to us. It's probably $4,000 more plus benefits.
I think the idea here, if I'm right, and Glenn maybe can correct me, we're using some of the $150,000 from the state to
That's
offset that.
Yeah,
That's
but not
equipment.
toward salaries or anything,
But
but
the-
Chief Street will probably, put words in his mouth, he'll probably talk about, the savings of,
The equipment.
proposed police officers not going to, having to go to the academy.
Yeah.
The call hours that come from being at the academy, the, canine already trained, and then fire training. There's different numbers associated with that we believe is, cost savings, especially the first.
Far above what?
Versus
Yeah.
just the salary, but like in training.
Okay.
The difference here is when we were asked to look at this grant, we looked at it from a perspective of hiring a new officer with no training. And that would be the starting salary, plus he goes to the academy. As soon as he graduates from the academy, he moves up one step like that. We looked at it from 1 year. So we looked at it from the perspective of new officer. Since that time, and since
On a new officer, what's it cost us to send them down for training?
Well, if you look at the total expense, Walter State, just the tuitions, $2,667, plus $950 for academy meals while they're at the academy, plus $550 for meals away from the academy, which is a total of $4,167. In addition to that, we pay that new officer 4 pay periods at an entry-level salary. It comes to $5,088 that we pay him while he's at school, not benefiting us a bit here. So you're talking for an officer just to get through the academy, and his salary is $9,255 that we actually save by hiring a certified officer. In addition to those, when he comes back from the academy, we owe him 200 hours of comp time. And if you put a dollar amount to that, you're talking about $3,180. And again, we have not got anything out of these people because they're untrained. And then after that, we have to put them through 4 months of field training. Then we have to send them to fire school. So it's about a year from the day we hire a new employee until we get any service at all out of them. We're very fortunate. I'm sort of proud of the fact that we're starting to attract senior officers from other agencies. And these are not what I refer to as gypsy police officers. These are good, solid police officers that have got good records, good backgrounds, and will make excellent police officers here. So we're saving over $10,000 right off the bat in hiring a senior officer. Plus, the real benefit to us is that we can put them on the road just in a few weeks and have it. Right now, I'm down really 3 officers. I've got 2 that start the academy next Monday. I've got 1 on maternity leave. I'm down a full shift for the Jonesborough Police Department. And it's very important to us to get that up and get it moving because this is a busy time of year for us with training, vacations, and the other things that we have to do, all the extracurricular activities we do downtown. So we're paying them more to get that senior officer in here. And there's probably not a position in town that has as much liability attached to it as a police officer. And it's important that you get good, experienced officers that can go out there immediately. We don't have to wait the year to train them and still don't know what we've got. But when I can look at an officer and say he's worked for this agency for 15, 20 years and has an excellent record, and they're a good fit for Jonesborough, they have to be a good fit for us, then I think it's a win-win situation for us.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm not expressing concern that I'm against it by any means. I'm just saying that we need to make sure that that money is in the budget, you know, because General's getting hit several times tonight with additional money to be put into the budget. And, you know, with this, what was budgeted and what Abby had figured from is less than what we're starting these people out at. All I want to make sure is that we've got the money. I don't have a problem with hiring qualified people.
In the long run, you'll end up saving. It's
Right.
yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm just saying the budget wise, we need to make sure that the budget can handle this.
Could I respond
Yeah,
to
let's-
that, to Ms. Causey?
Yes, Director Ford, and we'll let Glenn touch on the budget there a little bit. I'm
The
sure.
big thing about a COPS grant is a 3-year grant period that's basically a 75-25 match. Now, again, in the state of Tennessee now, when you hire an individual, let's say off the street that has no law enforcement experience at all, you have 6 months to send them to the police academy. That has to be done. And once they graduate from the police academy, they automatically, it's built in our salary system here. As soon as they graduate from the police academy, they automatically move to a step 2. The issue here is when you look at how the COPS grant is funded, what they prefer is that they pay you a lot more money on the front end, so by year 3, they are paying a lot less to prepare you for that year 4 budget when you take them all. I think back in 2000, when we got 4 officers on the COPS grant, it seems to me like they paid us, or the town paid like $4,000 a year per officer. May have been 8, but it was a very minuscule amount that first year. The bottom line is they want to front load what they're paying the local government, so in the end, you're working toward paying the entire salary on the fourth year. To go back to what Chief Street was saying, if you look at the salary difference that you're speaking of for both officers, that first year would be $6,000 for the both of them. That's the difference in what's been proposed to the board as to what was budgeted. There's around $6,000 difference for the year between the two officers. If you look at the savings of not having to hire two officers and send them to the academy, one of them even has firefighter 1, 2, and 3, so he doesn't even have to go to the academy. But just for the training, salaries, and that kind of thing, you're saving on both officers $24,870 plus that fire school. So you're saving $26,000 that first year by not having to send those two to the academy. So the end result is you're still $18,000 to $19,000 to the good, budget-wise, hiring them at that step 5, but being able to almost immediately put them on patrol. Does that make sense? I mean, is that?
Yes, I understand that.
All right.
My only question was the budget that we received on the COPS grant
Right.
and what we're starting these people out at are completely different.
Sure.
And I just think that they should have matched.
Well, again, it's difficult. Basically all we have to go on is the salary plan that the town has. You have no way of knowing who's going to apply for those jobs. If you've got an officer that's got a 10 or 15-year career somewhere and is a very good officer, he's not going to come to Jonesborough for grade 10, step 2.
Well, we were going to start him out at a 3, step 3.
Well, I
According
mean,
to the
again,
grant. Then we're going to start him out
Right.
at a 5, which I understand. All I'm saying is we need to make sure we have money in the budget.
Yes, ma'am.
I think if I can address it, I think if you saw the grant budget and said, let's say $34,700 salary, $10,000 training, and you start going down the details of it, and then we actually had a proposed budget in front of you, which might be easier to explain budget actual versus what was in the grant. So I can say that we are putting momentum behind having the budget ready for review as soon as we can, because I think that continues to come up. Not having that budget, the current budget, and I understand what you're saying is, at least budgetarily, if you saw the difference.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about it.
Yeah.
Not concerned about this. I just
Right.
need to make sure, because
'Cause
the 5 of us are responsible for the budget to make sure that we have money to fund whatever we have.
It's somewhat a good time, actually, to, take into account if you think we're $4,000 into the negative here, and there's going to be some long-term savings, as Craig was saying. But if there's a better time to do it, it is before you actually set your budget, because we know we are allocating $4,000 to this that Virginia's concerned about. That allows Glenn and them to say, okay, we've got this expense, where we fit it into our budget, and you might have to go find savings of $4,000 somewhere else. So that's my expectations. We have to find the money for it, and we will.
And kind of walking the terrain to the anticipation of what the board needs for, future meetings is to look at that, because like I say, we've had discussions internally, staff-wise, as far as, here's a budget for a new officer, and they're gonna have to go to training, and we've discussed all that, but that's not before you tonight to say, here's the cost savings between proposed budget and actually hiring these two officers.
We're fortunate to get good officers that's wanting to come. I agree 100%. The only thing I'm saying, and I guess being a former town employee is where this is coming from, is general always struggled every year trying to balance. And I just don't want us to obligate to all this stuff and then not be able to balance it, because we sure don't need a tax increase.
Well, we've got that 150 grand from the state that can be used for some equipment and things
Yeah,
like
so
that,
that's-
which
that-
allows
But
us
that's
not
not
to spend it.
salary.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the nice thing about that is
Yeah.
it's not although it's a one-time expense, the longevity of the equipment is
Yeah.
anywhere from 8 to 12 years probably
Right.
as far as the use of those funds.
So Virginia's not just a good lawyer, she's also a good accountant, so she watches her dollars there, and we appreciate that, certainly.
And I applaud Chief for what he's done.
It is a
I really
home
do.
run,
Yeah.
a home run to get people as qualified as these two gentlemen, and one of them, I think, is a K-9 officer, is that right?
That's correct. That is a bonus for us. He's a certified, I've got $11,000 dog that's on vacation. We need to get that dog back in service, Paws and Blue.
Yeah.
Of course, Major Ainscroft worked on this extensively. And one other thing about the funding, the Bureau of Justice doesn't look a lot at what we say the salary is gonna be. If you look at the semantics of that grant, for 2 positions, they only allow $250,000 for 2 positions. If you start that officer at $75,000 a year, they're still only gonna allow for 2 positions, $250,000. You spend that the best way you can.
Yeah.
For 3 years.
For 3 years.
Okay, very good discussion. Alderman, any other comments? I think we got a good good discussion there, and we can take both of them together, accepting the COPS grant and the governor's local government support grant. And we have the item number 2, part of that is the acceptance of these 2 highly qualified police officers. If no one has any other discussion, I'd love to have a motion.
So are we doing 1 and 2 together, or?
I think we said that Jim said we could do 1 and 2 together, yeah.
Okay, motion to approve 1 and 2, as
Yep.
stated.
Okay, very good. We've got a motion to approve from Alderman Callahan for both options 1 and 2.
Second.
Got a second from Alderman Countermine. Any other discussion? All right, call for the vote, please.
Alderman Callahan.
Aye.
Alderman Calamine.
Aye.
Alderman Causey.
Aye.
Alderman Dixon.
All right, very good. Motion carried. And been a little bit of a crazy year, but that would be good reason why to have our budget a little bit done a little bit sooner. But Virginia has some great points right there, and I know she's a big supporter. But really, Chief Street hit a home run, I think, with these 2 hires, and it's the kind of qualified, good people that we want to bring to Jonesborough. And in the long run, it's going to save us tens of thousands of dollars. Very good. Next item on the agenda is discussion and possible action concerning an update on unfunded projects, and it couldn't have been any more appropriate, because I know this popped up on Facebook today. And but Craig and I had a conversation about this, because I went to the Corner Cup to get me some coffee from Deb, and when I parked, I saw that bridge. I thought, what in the heck happened to that bridge? And I asked Deb about it. She goes, yeah, it's been like that, and I said, well, yeah, it's not acceptable. So I got with Craig, and Craig said, yeah, he was aware of it, and they were working on things. But at that time, I think we get a lot of work out of our Carter County work crew. Those guys were down at the Jackson Theater. We got our own staff out putting in water lines and doing road work. So everybody's staying really busy. And Craig and I were brainstorming on how can we get this bridge replaced quick. And a big part of that, Craig come up with is I think he could, if everything worked out right with the weather, because we had to get that Lincoln Park started up there and get her done, because I think in August is our deadline on that, and that's worth $500,000 to us.
There you
So
go.
that park was a priority, and so we were going to try to, I guess, split a needle there somewhere and try to find a 2-week window. We could get our Carter County work crew in there and maybe our own staff to get that bridge done, and then we had just kind of a lot of things happen this year, and we lost our Carter County work crew. I want to say, right? When did we lose them for the pandemic?
I spoke with Captain Lundy, who's kind of over that work detail 2 weeks ago. Of course, this was before the cases started going up, and they were just starting to send out their mowing and litter pickup crews as their phase 1, and then phase 2 would be sending the actual construction crews back out. I have not talked to him this week to see where they're at in that reopening, but we've basically been without that inmate crew since middle to the latter part of February of this year. And of course, you know, you can certainly understand the state prison's position. They have the main prison in Mountain City. They have another building they refer to as the Carter County Annex that's in Carter County. And so those work detail crews stay in that annex, but there's still several hundred of those. So one or two come back in with COVID. That's a huge problem to the prison system. So I don't know, Mayor, when we'll get those back. I'll reach back out to Captain Lundy this week, but with the uptick in positive testing, my concern is they may scale those plans back.
But this would be something you think our staff would ultimately end up having to do if that's the case, and once they get Lincoln Park done, is that's, I guess you guys are gonna set a priority list and see where this falls?
Well, I would think maybe the board might want to set a priority list, and we could, you know, certainly, obviously, of those two bridges, we're changing the glue lam construction to a steel I-beam construction, which makes much more sense and should be there when I'm in the ground. We've purchased the treated material actually to do even replace one of those bridges. We would just need, funding-wise, the money to purchase the treated lumber for the second bridge.
How much is it?
I would imagine, Alderman Countermine, but the total cost that we would probably have in it with what we have on hand right now would be less than $25,000. A big problem is, even if we use the inmate crew, we would have about a week's window worth of time. The inmates would have to take all the material off the glue lams. They're huge. We have to remove those with a crane and then cut them up before we can move them. Then we would have to, the I-beams are much shorter. They're not near as tall in height as the glue lams. So then we would have some concrete work to do to raise that back up, then come back with the crane and set those steel I-beams. The answer to the question is, yes, sir, our street department staff can do that. I can supervise and help do that. But, I mean, I want the board to bear in mind, we have a performance deadline to get that grant money spent, which is in August. I do not think the park construction itself is going to be finished by the end of August.
Yeah.
So
we need to get the Lincoln Park done, and you know, we can let Glenn. Do you want to address this when you talk about?
Sure. So there, you had.
You mind speaking at the microphone there, so we can make sure that if anybody's at home listening, they can hear your voice, because they might not be able to.
I didn't do this for Craig, but I'm gonna do it for myself. People at home might be pressing pause. So what you have, as far as what we call the staff report or the narrative, that's basically from me looking over Craig's long memorandum, very detailed about the projects themselves. So what we face here is, if you look at some of the town administrator report in particular, I'm hitting a lot on infrastructure. So there's infrastructure that we have is really good, and then there's infrastructure needs. I would consider things like Shell Road be an infrastructure issue. Anything to do with the water lines, the footbridges, all these different things. My idea was to put the board and staff together in a work session, whether you want to call it a round table, or basically, other than sitting here as far as that we do for final actions, that we actually sit here and discuss the priorities, the funding available or funding that's needed. Once we have a priority list, then we say how are we going to fund it. And I think that's just one of the missing links is outstanding projects that, as Craig was saying, Mr. Ford was saying, is unfunded projects. They're projects that are in the hopper. There's just not assigned funds to them. They're important. They require monies. As Alderwoman Causey was saying, a lot of these are general fund. So kind of a different ballgame to look at funding sources. That's my recommendation, is to sit down. I'm sure there's more than 5 projects. There's more phone calls that we receive from different citizens. Sidewalks are identified in this. They are projects or issues that town staff is reviewing or consistently and constantly looking at, but they fall short of having a funding source.
Okay.
So my idea is actually towards the end is recommending a work session, and then we see where we're at, and then we see what we can do with the current budget to address the items, and if we don't have a current budget to address the items, then how are we going to fund them? Whether or not it's through a capital outlay note. Percentages are very low. I've been looking at those things. Rick Delaney was here. He's kind of testifying that there's different rates right now that are lower today than they were before, variable interest rates. So they're all viable projects. We just have to fund them.
All right, very good. I like the thought of a work session, and you guys will coordinate that. But
we would
get all 5 of us together there. But really, the 5 projects you list are East Main Street water line upgrade. We're working on, I think, some of that now.
Correct.
And definitely it's a project we need to complete and continue on. Shell Road, to me, if I was after the water line upgrade there on East Main Street, to me, then you knock out Mill Spring Park Bridge, which is probably something we can do quicker than we can Shell Road. But Shell Road being a pretty big project, I think, once we get into that. And then the sidewalk replacement there on West Main Street, something we definitely need to do. So it'll be a good discussion for us to have, and then we'll see where Virginia can come up with the money at.
And
Hey, Chuck, so how much money do we lose if we don't finish Lincoln Park on time?
It's a
500,000?
yeah. Well, I think Bob has addressed that. I think we're going to be okay on that.
I think we'll have the funds themselves
Yeah.
expended. We just may not, like, we purchase materials for certain buildings, we may not have those constructed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have the funding
I
expended.
think we're going to
That's
be fine
good.
on that grant.
That's good.
Yeah, the strategy was, I mean, it's hard to say, but we have to spend the money.
Yeah.
Because then there's a reimbursement. So we're okay on that end. It's about spending the money before the project's supposed to be complete.
Good.
I think that park will really get used.
That's what I need to hear.
Yes, it's the narratives don't really show the full picture of these
Yeah,
projects.
it's going to be a great facility.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Alderman, you see the recommendation there. It's for a work session. We'll let Glenn and them lead us that way. So if somebody can make a motion to approve that recommendation to coordinate the work session. Motion to approve from Alderman Causey.
Second.
Second from Alderman Callahan. Any discussion? Call for the vote, please.
Alderman Causey.
Aye.
Alderman Callahan.
Aye.
Alderman Calamine. Alderman Dixon.
Aye.
All right, very good. Last thing we got Glenn and them put with us there was a discussion and possible action concerning the approval of a request for an outdoor use permit, Texas Burritos and More, which is 109 Courthouse Square. Glenn, do you want to talk to that real quick? Since you put this together for us, is that correct?
Yes, so
Looks good.
you want me to go up here?
Yeah, if you can. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Your wife might be listening.
Yeah. Validation that I'm actually at a meeting.
That's right. Hasn't been 3 hours yet, so we'll get you home a little earlier than the last one.
So I do want to say that there's another agenda item that I wanted to bring up after this one on right-of-way usage application for certificate of appropriateness. But as far as the outdoor use permit, yeah, the Texas Burritos and More, Mary Sipple, she did apply. Basically, she had approval of 2 tables outside the business at the storefront, each one having 2 seats per table. And to be quite honest, with the trending issues that are going on with the pandemic and the encouragement to do things more outside, the encouragement to be outside, eat outside, that gives her an opportunity to increase her seat capacity outside The furniture, whether the tables and the chairs, that's been approved by the Historic Zoning Commission. So as far as the look, the design, that's been worked out. This will allow for a total of 4 tables, 4 seats per table, or a total of 16 seats.
Can she expand beyond that? Because I know I had a little discussion with Craig about going around the side of the building there on Dogwood Lane beside the building, because we got some overgrown foliage for the most part there along the side of the building. If we took a little bit of that foliage out, it's possible to kind of expand that seating around the side of the building where she could get a few more tables in there.
I'd have to review. I'm going to say that I'm not 100% familiar on that part, other than typically the seating or the tables are based on the I want to say storefront or the property itself. I know what you're saying as far as going around towards the creek side.
Yeah, well,
that's something we can investigate to see whether or not that's an option, and if it is, we can
come back to the board and just
we can talk to Mary.
Okay. Yeah, we're just talking about whether or not we can. I guess we could put the tables. I think Mary Sipple, she said she'd buy the tables if we got that set up.
Okay.
So that's something for the board to.
We can approach her after the board's action tonight, expecting it to be a positive board action, but we can definitely talk to her. She's a lot like our downtown merchants, just looking at ways to be a little bit more flexible and agile in this pandemic times.
I think it's great to see on Main Street.
Right.
The cafe's been successful putting those tables out in that little alleyway,
Yeah.
and the more we get outside, the
It'll
better.
be subject to liability and hold harmless, and that Jim will have to review. I think she submitted everything that she was supposed to.
Okay.
And a lot of the outdoor use permits are on town property.
I should say if they're using the town sidewalk, then it's on town property. And we do also look at ADA accessibility and pedestrians to make sure there's enough room for that access.
Okay. I like it, and then we can.
Actually, they approached the Historic Zoning Commission when they first opened up to do just what you're proposing.
Yeah, I think it wasn't too long ago, or she's been looking at different ways to expand, and this is probably her biggest expansion. Yeah.
All right, I like it. Alderman, any discussion? If not, I'll take a motion to approve recommendation.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve from Alderman Countermine, and a second from Alderman Dixon. Call for the vote, please.
Alderman Countermine.
Aye.
Alderman Dixon.
Aye.
Alderman Callahan.
Aye.
Alderman Causey.
All right, motion carried. And I think Glenn says he has one more thing here.
Yes, Cameo and myself, we've been working on, Cameo. I'll give her the credit because it looks really good. So, again, dealing with just listening, and again, I wanted to say as far as back up to the projects that we discussed earlier, or Craig's memo, we do care about the projects, and we do want to communicate that they are important to us. And the same thing goes with the downtown merchants, is looking at opportunities to, listen to them and work with them. And so, Gabe with
Gabriel's Christmas and Tennessee Tales. He's been one of the many merchants working to be flexible and agile, just like Glenn mentioned, but he really wants to extend his shop to the right-of-way in front of his store. He was asking specifically for the 24th and 25th of July. So that's how this came about, and we want to support him and any other merchant that wants to do that. And so that's how this form came about.
So we were balancing, like a lot of times, there's the administrative side, and then there's the other side, the BMA action side. And in this right-of-way usage application, there's one part that is more administrative strong, as far as using for a certain amount of time, and we haven't discussed that. That might be a 72-hour period that someone can place merchandise outside their storefront within a certain distance, still allowing that accessibility by pedestrians, versus the idea of a tent being put up, or a structure, and those, like if you answered, I want a tent, then that tent would have to be approved by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. So there's different functions. We're looking at when a merchant comes in, there's the due process, which is the BMA oftentimes, but then at the same time, they're 30 days to wait, like after this meeting, 30 days to wait for an answer on something that's wanting to be done downtown. We thought about not necessarily expediting it, but providing an administrative, exhaustive way to do that.
Yeah.
So that's one of them is the one that says town administration, and then the other one, if you check, hey, I'm going to do a tent, then they know offhand that they're going to have the BMA approve that. We do this as a trial period. We look at it, we revisit it, sort of like we've been talking about. You'd mentioned relooking at certain things each year,
Yeah.
whether they're fees or other things. I think that's just something of a habit that we'll get into, and this would be one of those. Is whether or not is it working? Is it suitable for the downtown merchants? It's not just for one; it would be for others, but it provides for at least an application to apply for. Provide your information, and we determine whether it's administrative approval or BMA approval or both.
I think it's a good idea.
Very
We
good.
talked about it last time, is what we can do for the downtown merchants.
Well, this is it. Yeah.
Plus, some events, and the more we can help them, the better.
I want to commend Cameo. I mean, she
Yeah, she's good.
whipped it out. We had some comments, some things like liability and hold harmless, and we included that in that. So
Cameo's been a superstar for us this year.
Well,
it was
the whole
a
team has been good.
and make it look like the other ones so that everybody's not confused about, hey, it looks like our other applications forms, so it's very consistent.
So what do you need for the board to do? Do we need to?
Make a motion.
Make a motion to approve both the one that says town administrator and the other one that's BMA.
Do we need to
Have
add
to
this to
add
the
it.
agenda first?
Yes,
Okay.
sorry.
I'll take a motion to add
Let's
this
add it to the agenda.
items that we've discussed to our agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Motion to approve from Alderman Causey, a second from Alderman Countermine. Call for the vote, please.
Alderman Causey.
Aye.
Alderman Countermine. Alderman Callahan.
Aye.
Alderman Dixon.
Very good. Now we got this new item on the agenda. Alderman, any discussion about this?
And is this a temporary thing, given the situation for the businesses?
We would look at basically if it's okay with the board would be a 72-hour period and it'd be a trial basis, and we'd come back and say, it's good, it's bad, or it's indifferent, or we need to tweak it some. We'll continue to do that. And again, not just with downtown. If you saw my town administrator report, you notice some other programs that we have that's
Yes.
also can work with the other business corridors.
Very glad to see that, too.
Yeah.
Yep. Very good.
Excellent.
Very good. Thank you, Glenn. Appreciate your effort on there to take us to another level. We appreciate it.
Let's see if I need to keep standing.
Now that we put it on the agenda, we gotta approve it.
Yes, I'll take a motion to approve these two items.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I got a motion to approve from Alderman Countermine, a second from Alderman Causey. Any discussion? Call for the vote, please.
Aye.
Alderman Causey.
Aye.
Alderman Callahan.
Aye.
Alderman Dixon.
Aye.
Motion carried, and I think we are adjourned. All right. Thank you. Do I get to take this home with me, Cameo? Each one of us can take it home for a week.